Hey there, picture this. I'm standing on my dock, coffee in hand, staring at a neon orange piece of paper taped to my old fishing boat. The kind of boat that's seen more fish than half the guys in this county. It's a violation notice, screaming at me to remove my boat from my lake in 48 hours or face a $500 a day fine. The nerve of these people, the Willow Grove Homeowners Association, acting like they own the water my family's held for 3 generations, had me laughing, then fuming, then plotting. This wasn't just about a boat. It was about entitled bullies who'd been using my lake for years without so much as a please, and now they were coming for me on my land. Oh, they had no idea who they were messing with. My name's Ethan Caldwell, and 6 months ago, I was just another burned-out tech guy in Seattle, grinding through 80-hour weeks at a cloud security startup I'd built from scratch. When a big tech firm swooped in with a buyout offer that made my head spin, more zeros than I'd ever dreamed, I cashed out, packed my bags, and headed for the one place I knew I could breathe. Crescent Lake, a 60-acre gem in rural Washington that my grandpa bought back in the 50s. He was a logger turned environmentalist, a tough old guy with a soft spot for clear water and quiet mornings. That lake and the little cabin on its shore was a sanctuary, then my dad's and now mine. I spent my childhood summers there, learning to cast a line, listening to Grandpa's stories about fighting off developers who wanted to turn the place into a gravel pit. Water's worth more than gold, Ethan. He'd say, his voice like gravel itself. Guard it like your life depends on it. Those words stuck with me, even when I was neck-deep in code and boardroom battles thousands of miles away. So there I was, 41, single, financially set, and done with the rat race. I fixed up the cabin, kept the creaky wood floors but added fast Wi-Fi and a decent shower, and settled in, expecting nothing but sunrises, fishing, and maybe a bear or two. My boat, a 15-foot aluminum relic Grandpa used to pilot, was my pride and joy, weathered but sturdy, perfect for gliding across the lake at dawn. Life was good, peaceful, exactly what I needed, until that orange notice showed up, followed by a letter from the HOA, signed by none other than Victor Langston, their self-important president. It was dripping with fake authority, calling my boat an eyesore and demanding it be registered with their community standards. I read it twice, half expecting it to be a prank, but no, these folks were dead serious. They'd been throwing fishing tournaments on my lake for years, calling it their community jewel, and now they had the gall to tell me what I could do with my boat. I called up my neighbor, Hank Morrow, a retired mechanic who'd known Grandpa back in the day. Hank's place was a half-mile down the shore, a no-nonsense house he'd built himself, with a boat shed the HOA once tried to call unsightly. Ethan, those HOA vultures have been strutting around like they own the whole damn county, he said, chuckling through the phone. They've got this fancy fishing club, the Prime Casters, acting like your lake's their private playground. Your grandpa would have chased him off with a wrench. Hank wasn't wrong. Grandpa wasn't one for diplomacy when it came to trespassers. He also dropped a bomb. The HOA had been hosting these big fishing derbies, complete with tents, barbecues, and even a temporary dock, all on my land for at least a decade. I hung up, stunned, and hit the internet. Sure enough, the Willow Grove HOA's website was plastered with photos of their annual Lakeside Classic, guys in $500 fishing vests posing with bass they'd caught in my water. One post even called Crescent Lake, our community's crown jewel. I was floored. They'd been freeloading on my property while I was away, and now they were trying to bully me out of it. I needed a plan, so I called my old college buddy, Rachel and Gwen, an environmental lawyer who'd spent years untangling land and water rights disputes. "Let me get this straight," she said, laughing so hard I could hear her coffee spill. "You own the lake, like the actual deed to the water and the lake bed, and they're telling you to move your boat? Ethan, this is trespassing, plain and simple. They're screwed." Rachel's always had a knack for cutting through the noise, and she told me to hold off on firing back. "First, we document everything. Get cameras up, pull your property records, and let's see how deep this goes." I took her advice, ordering high-res wireless cameras with night vision and motion alerts, setting them up around the lake, especially where the HOA liked to party. Then I dug through Dad's old filing cabinet and found the deeds, pristine, ironclad documents for 1954, plus a 2012 survey map that marked every inch of Crescent Lake as Caldwell property, down to the last pebble. No HOA, no county, no one else had a claim. I was locked and loaded, but I needed to know what these clowns were really up to. A few days later, I got a mass email inviting me to a Willow Grove HOA meeting. Curious, I showed up, slipping into the back of their gaudy community center, all fake marble and overpriced chandeliers. Victor Langston was at the podium, mid-50s, slick gray hair, wearing a blazer that screamed, "I'm important." He was droning on about mailbox colors and hedge heights when he got to lake regulations. "We've had reports of an unauthorized boat on community waters," he said, his voice dripping with annoyance. "All watercraft must comply with our aesthetic guidelines to maintain the lake's pristine image." I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand. Victor looked thrown, like no one ever dared interrupt his sermon. "Yeah, hi," I said, keeping it casual. "When you say community waters, who exactly owns the lake? Is it the HOA, the county? What's the deal?" The room went quiet, a few heads turning my way. Victor's smile tightened, just a hair. "The lake's a community resource under HOA management," he said, brushing me off. "It's been that way since Willow Grove was built." I pushed a little harder. "So, you've got a deed, or is it some kind of county agreement?" His knuckles went white on the podium, and he dodged, saying the details aren't relevant, before moving on. I caught him exchanging a look with a woman I later learned was Diane Kessler, the HOA's vice president. They were hiding something, and I was starting to smell it. After the meeting, a guy in a fancy fishing vest cornered me. Carl Dutton, head of the Primecasters. He was all smiles, sizing me up like a used car salesman. "You must be new," he said, shaking my hand too hard. "That old Caldwell place, right? We thought it was abandoned." I told him it was very much not abandoned and introduced myself. His eyes widened when he heard Caldwell. "Well, welcome," he said, recovering fast. "You should join our fishing club. Exclusive access to the best spots on the lake." The irony was thick, him offering me access to my own lake. I played along, asking about their big tournament the next weekend. "Oh, it's the event of the year," he bragged. "East Shore, big prizes, you name it." I thanked him, already planning to crash their party with my cameras rolling. As I headed out, I overheard Victor whispering to Carl and Diane by the coffee table, something about speeding up the plan and handling the Caldwell issue. They glanced my way, and I pretended to fuss with my coffee, but my gut told me this was bigger than a boat. That night, Victor pulled up to my cabin in a shiny Lexus, all fake charm. "Mr. Caldwell, we weren't properly introduced," he said, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm Victor Langston, HOA president. We should talk about bringing your property up to community standards. That boat, for instance, it's a bit rustic." I leaned against my porch railing, matching his smile. "Funny, I wasn't aware my land was under your jurisdiction, Victor." He didn't flinch, but I saw a flicker of nerves. "All properties here are part of our community vision," he said, waving a hand like he was dismissing a fly. I pushed back, asking what authority he had over my lake. He doubled down, claiming the HOA had managed it for years, but when I mentioned my family's deed from '54, his mask slipped for a split second, just long enough for me to catch it. "There's some misunderstanding about historical arrangements," he said, his voice tighter now. "Let's keep this friendly, comply with the boat notice, and we'll start off right." It was a veiled threat, and I told him I'd think about it. As he drove off, I knew the gloves were coming off. The next morning, my boat was gone. Poof. Nothing left but another violation notice saying it had been impounded for non-compliance, with a $750 fine to get it back and a 30-day clock before they'd sell at auction. I was livid, pacing the dock, ready to storm Victor's office and give him a piece of my mind. But Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. "When you're mad, slow down, think clearer." So I did. I called the sheriff's office, but the deputy brushed me off, saying it was a civil matter, and sounding way too cozy with the HOA for my liking. That's when Rachel rolled into town, her laptop and legal pads in tow. We spread out the deeds, the survey, everything on my dining table. "These are bulletproof," she said, grinning. "Your grandpa didn't mess around." She also found a gold mine in the county records. The original Willow Grove development plans explicitly stated Crescent Lake was private, not part of their land. The HOA had been lying to everyone, residents included, for years. Hank dropped by that afternoon with a bombshell. His cousin at the county planning office had seen an application from the HOA for a massive project, a luxury resort with condos, a marina, the works, all planned for my lake's shoreline. It clicked. Victor wasn't just a petty tyrant. He was scheming to cash in on my land, probably banking on me being some absentee owner who'd sell cheap. My showing up, asking questions, had thrown a wrench in his million-dollar daydream. Rachel and I hashed out a plan over burgers from the local diner. We could sue them in next week, she said, but let's play it smart. Let their fishing tournament go ahead, catch him red-handed, then hit him hard. I agreed. We sent a polite letter to the HOA, asking for any documents proving their authority over the lake, just enough to make them sweat without showing our cards. Rachel also suggested I talk to Mia Torres, a local reporter who'd covered HOA scandals before. Over coffee at a diner 20 miles out, I gave Mia the basics, holding back the resort angle, but hinting at something big. This smells like a story, she said, her eyes lighting up. Give me the green light and I'll dig. I told her to wait, but keep her ears open. The tournament day came, and I watched from my deck as trucks and boats swarmed the East Shore. My East Shore. Carl was out there, barking orders, setting up tents, and a banner for the 12th Annual Primecasters Classic. Rachel showed up with binoculars, and we counted 50 people, 20 boats, all trespassing like it was their birthright. Then Victor arrived with 3 suits, carrying glossy brochures, and pointing at the shoreline like they owned it. Investors, Rachel whispered. We crept closer, hiding in the pines, and caught Victor's pitch. Prime lakefront, full control, just a few loose ends to tie up. One suit asked about existing owners, and Victor lied through his teeth. One holdout, but we're close to a deal. We've managed this lake for years. Formal control's a formality. I was seething, but Rachel's hand on my arm kept me cool. We had enough. While the tournament partied on, Rachel filed an emergency injunction with the county court, attaching our deeds, camera footage, and the HOA's own website as evidence of trespassing. The judge didn't blink. He signed the order that afternoon. I hired a security crew to slap private property signs around the lake, and with a sheriff's deputy in tow, Rachel and I marched into the tournament. The deputy called for attention, and 50 pairs of eyes turned to us. This event's on private property without permission, he said, his voice cutting through the music. You're all ordered to leave now. Carl stormed over, red-faced. What the hell? We've done this for 12 years. Rachel stepped up, calm as ice. Crescent Lake belongs to Mr. Caldwell. The HOA has zero legal right to be here. Here's the court order. She held up the injunction, and the crowd went dead silent. Victor pushed through, shouting, "This is absurd. The lake's been ours for decades." Rachel handed him the deed and smiled. "That's false, Mr. Langston. You've been trespassing, and we've got proof you lied to investors about owning this land. That's called fraud." The residents started murmuring, and one guy piped up, "We pay $6,000 a year in HOA fees for lake access. You saying we got scammed?" Rachel nodded. "Your HOA's been misrepresenting its authority. You've been misled." The crowd turned on Victor, Diane, and Carl, who looked like they wanted to sink into the mud. The investors bolted to their cars, brochures in hand, clearly done with Victor's lies. I pulled him aside as the chaos unfolded. "You messed with the wrong lake, Victor," I said, keeping my voice low. "I've got recordings of you pitching my land to those suits." Fraud's a bad look. His face went pale, and he stammered about a misunderstanding, but I cut him off. "Get off my property." By sundown, the lake was empty, the tents gone, the banner crumpled in the dirt. Mia's article hit the front page the next day, exposing the HOA's decade of lies and their failed resort scheme. It went viral, shared across X and local news. The HOA called an emergency meeting, and I showed up with Rachel to watch the fallout. Diane tried to run damage control, but the residents weren't having it. "Where'd our lake fees go?" one woman shouted. 3 board members quit on the spot, and Victor was nowhere to be seen. I stood up, feeling every eye on me. I'm not here to shut you out, I said. My issues with your leaders claiming what's mine. Let's find a way to share this lake fair and square. The room softened, and a few folks even clapped. Later, an old guy shook my hand. Your grandpa let us kids fish here, he said. He'd be proud. That hit me hard. I hadn't known. The aftermath was wild. The county launched a probe into the HOA's finances, sniffing around those lake maintenance fees. Victor's investors sued him for fraud. My boat was back on the dock by Tuesday, with a half-assed apology from the new HOA president, a retired teacher named Ellen who seemed genuinely sorry. Mia called a week later with a kicker. Victor wasn't even Victor Langston. He was Vince Larson, a disgraced real estate hustler from Nevada who'd lost his license for pulling similar scams. The county prosecutor was circling, and word was Vince skipped town, taillights fading into the night. Diane swore she didn't know his past, but emails suggested otherwise. I worked with Ellen and the new board to set up the Crescent Lake Trust, a nonprofit that lets residents buy affordable access permits, with every cent going to conservation. The Prime Casters got a makeover. Now the Crescent Anglers, open to anyone who respects the lake. Carl moved to Oregon, no surprise there. The East Shore, where Vince dreamed of condos, is now a public park with a fishing pier and a plaque for Grandpa. Water's worth more than gold. I still take my boat out at dawn, sometimes with Hank, trading stories about the old days. Rachel swings by to check on the trust, making sure it's built to last. The lake's thriving. Clearer water, more fish, a living testament to doing things right. Looking back, this wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about turning a mess into something better, something Grandpa would have nodded at. Standing up to bullies like Vince showed me what this lake means, not just to me, but to everyone who sees it as more than a paycheck. I hung a photo of Grandpa in the cabin, grinning with a fish in hand, the lake sparkling behind him. Every time I see it, I'm reminded, protect what matters, and you'll build something that lasts. So what do you think? Was I too hard on the HOA? Or did they get what was coming? Have you ever dealt with a bully like Vince? Or an HOA gone rogue? Drop a comment, share your story, I'm all ears. And if you like this, hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from.